RTX 5050 is pretty underwhelming when it comes to the desktop version, but maybe the laptop version has some hidden value.
And the fact that the laptop version might be a little bit faster than the desktop version? Yeah, we'll talk more about that after a word from today's sponsor.
Have you ever wanted to hack the Matrix and learning how construction and even so you get to do more than just read about it? Today's video, shall we?
So we bought this laptop from Lenovo's website, and it actually came with a mystery gift that's behind the laptop. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this is a Lenovo LOQ that we spent a little over $1,000 on. Yeah, that's right, $1,000 for technically the entry-level NVIDIA GPU for a laptop when it comes to the new 50 series. So I'm curious what the value is going to be on this thing.
Yeah, very steep on the price point, but we'll go over all the full specs before we open this thing up. This laptop features the i5-13450HX, which is a 10-core, 16-threaded processor, the RTX 5050 8GB with its GDDR7 versus the desktop version that has GDDR6. Why NVIDIA? The LOQ models surgeons. This is like
It's a cool looking laptop, I'll give them that. Yeah, I really do like this lineup. I swear, I think I bought one of these new from Lenovo on eBay and it had a 47 in it for like $8.99.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's the best part about this. New gen though, right? Smile.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe there's some hidden performance with this 5050, but yeah, I mean, I really do like the shell of the laptop, the design, I love these. I think they look great. Backlit keyboard, a little bit of lighting on the power button, and obviously the screen looks pretty nice. It's 144 Hz, 1080p, it's got a webcam, speakers, all the stuff that you need.
And this also doubles as an indicator for what power profile it is on. As you can see, we already set this thing up and started getting things ready to go. So that's why there's apps already installed and we're already in there. You want to go over the power adapter?
Yeah, so it does use Lenovo's rectangle ports, not USB-C. It's their proprietary port. 245 watts. Wow.
That's
maybe PD, like power delivery or something.
Yeah, it might be power delivery because that's a lot. That's quite a lot to charge this little laptop. But you know what? We got the 5050 here, which we'll have to see what wattage this thing actually pulls under full load, and we'll verify how that compares.
It has so many watts. Just gigabit, a USB 3.0, and then our little rectangle power in jack.
So yeah, having the ports on the things.
So we got 13 gen i5-13450HX, 10-core, 16-thread. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had to pick between like 12 and 16, like if 16 single channel, I'd probably go 12. So we get an 8 and a 4 gig.
I just noticed it's single channel though.
Yeah, it was.
So it is single channel.
They make 12 gig sticks? 7.
Recently.
We're gonna use the web. Yeah. Oh, we got two things. Do we get two keyboard and mice? What? It's just even need
resolution. Now, obviously with this 1080p one. We're currently running performance mode, which it actually defaulted to, so I decided to stick with it. Far view distance and low textures at the native 1080p resolution. Now, obviously with this 1080p 144 Hz display, we're kind of hoping to get close to that. 144 plus FPS. I would imagine this game we shouldn't have any problems. And we are running on the max performance power profile, which allows us to get, well, the max TDP that we need out of this GPU. Right now we're not running at 100% load on the 5050, so we won't really know if we're actually maximizing the power on it, but it looks like we're peaking at about 50 watts. On the 5050, I'll have to cross-check to see what the native wattage is of this GPU, but that seems about right for a laptop GPU. Theoretically, you can get up to 75 potentially, but we're going to drop in and see what we got here. Now, the one big thing that I think is kind of an issue with this laptop is the 12 gigs of RAM. 12 gigs of RAM in 2025 is kind of weird, and this thing only having 12 gigs at $1,000 is even weirder. So I'd be curious to see how much that's going to hold us back in this game and even some higher end games that will really like having at least 16. But yeah, no, we're having no problems getting 100 plus FPS, 190 at times, looking pretty dang solid. I mean, again, this is a game that should run perfectly fine, and we are running performance settings. But yeah, it's just important to mention. Oh, I think I'm hitting the touchpad. The touchpad is counting as a hit with my wrist. Oh goodness, I don't like this. This is a real gamer, I think, pushing me. Oh no. Nice try, real gamer. Oh, I had to lean forward there. I think I blocked the laptop on that one. I had to lean forward. I was really hoping I didn't die there. In terms of temperatures, we're gamer, I think, pushing me.
The RTX 5050 is pretty underwhelming. 7.
Seen recently.
Oh, this
1080p counting will get cheaper at some point. You always got to know that with these laptops, buying direct from the vendor, you're going to pay a little bit more. Most of the times you're going to get the best value at like Best Buy and Walmart when these things go on sale. You would not be disappointed. It's really just about price and performance. Is it actually a good deal? At its current price, it doesn't seem like it's a good deal, especially with the RAM situation, regardless of gaming. At least in Fortnite. We'll see with the AAA titles when we try some higher-end games, how that runs. I have a feeling that 12 gigs of RAM is going to become a problem, and even the 5050, while be it a low-power GPU, is going to be held back. Wow. Short gaming session, but my wrist feels nice and cool. Did a good job keeping all the heat away from your wrists, so you can have a pretty solid gaming session without your palm getting sweaty. Big problem with some higher-end gaming laptops, so this being a more mid-range to budget level gaming laptop, it certainly is doing a good job keeping.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Professor Messer's Comptia A+ 220-1201. When you're troubleshooting a network problem, there are a series of steps that can give you a baseline of what might be working and what might not be working. The first thing you might want to check is to see if you have a link light. This is a light that's on the Ethernet connection that you're using, so this would be for a wired connection to the network. If you're plugged in and you see a light, then you're at least communicating and sending a signal to the device that's on the other end. If you don't see a light, then you might not have a good connection or you might have a bad cable. You then might want to ping the loopback address of the device that you're using. So you would simply ping 127.0.0.1 and see if you get a response back. It may seem odd that you're pinging a device that you're physically sitting in front of, but this is really checking to see if the IP stack that's in your system is operating normally. If there's any problem with the internal network configuration of your operating system, then you will not receive a ping back from this loopback address. From there, you might want to ping your local IP address. This would be the IP address that was assigned to your device from a DHCP server, or perhaps it's an address that you configured manually. In either case, you should ping that IP address to see if you get a response. This would verify that you indeed have a link light and you are connected to the rest of the network. Now let's try pinging a device that is somewhere else on our local network. And since most local networks have a default gateway, that's a perfect IP address to try. So check the IP address configuration of your computer where it says default gateway and try pinging that IP address. That will at least confirm that you're able to ping from your device to another device on your local network and receive the response. If all of that is working, it's time to try pinging a device that is outside of your local network. If you happen to know another IP address that's outside of your local network, you could try that one, or you could try some of the more popular addresses on the internet, such as Quad 8, Quad 9, or Quad 1. If you're having intermittent connectivity on your wireless network, then the problem may be associated with the channel or the frequencies that you're using, so you may be able to avoid interference from other devices by simply changing the configuration of your access point. Of course, our wireless connectivity expects that we'll be able to send and receive enough signal to be able to communicate. This means we may want to get closer to our access point so we have a stronger signal. You might want to try different antennas on your access point to see if you can communicate over a wider distance. And many devices support the ability to plug in an external antenna to their laptop or desktop computer. Many access points can evaluate other frequencies that may be in use in your area. It will then automatically choose an access point that minimizes any interference with other devices. You're also able to set that channel manually on your access point. That might be a good way to try different frequencies to see which one works best for you. Some access points have problems receiving multiple signals that have bounced off of things that may be around us. We refer to this as multipath interference. Sometimes flat surfaces can cause a problem on wireless networks when there's an excessive amount of multipath interference. And sometimes the access point is simply too far away. By moving that access point to a centralized area, you're effectively increasing the signal strength for everyone who's using that access point. It's obviously difficult to be able to see the packets as they're moving through the network or going across our wireless network. For that reason, when things start to have a problem on a computer, one of the most common complaints is that the network is slow. In reality, the problem might be with the CPU or memory inside of their local device. It could be with the application server. There might be an issue with the database server, and it may have nothing to do with the network. But it's up to you as the network administrator to determine if the problem is on those external devices or if the problem really is a network issue. An easy test would be to perform a ping from one end of the network to the other and be able to evaluate the response times that we're getting back. This is something you could also validate by performing a speed test. If you can get very good numbers on a speed test across the internet, then you probably are not having a significant network issue. You then might want to look at every hop along the way to determine what type of performance you might be seeing. So you might want to look at network utilization on each one of those network links, evaluate the number of errors, see how much throughput you might have through each one of those connections, and then determine if there's any filtering, firewalling, or ACLs that might be in place. And ultimately, you may need to take a packet capture from multiple points on the network. This will give you undeniable information on whether the slowdown is occurring on the network or if it's with the application. Windows provides ongoing network information in the system tray of the operating system, but occasionally you might see an alert that says limited or no connectivity, or it might say no internet access. You can start troubleshooting this problem by looking at the local IP address of your device. If you've received an IP address from a DHCP server or this address was configured statically, then you should be able to communicate outside of your local subnet. But if there is a problem with the DHCP server, you may have received an automatic private IP address, that is an APIPA address. This is one that will only have local connectivity on your subnet, and you will not be able to communicate outside of your local subnet. If that's the case, you will certainly see a message saying limited or no connectivity, or a message that says no internet access. If you do have a good IP address, then you should try communicating outside of your local subnet. Try your local gateway, and then try pinging a remote IP address that's on the other side of that local gateway. As you move further and further through the network, you will eventually find a place where you're no longer able to ping. And that should be the point where you can apply all of your troubleshooting efforts to solve this limited or no connectivity issue. These days, we perform a lot of real-time communication on our networks. It might be a real-time conference call with video, or it may be a voice over IP communication. When you're in these video calls or you're listening on a phone call, you're expecting to always be receiving information so that you can see that the video is changing and you can always hear what's happening on the other side. If you were to lose data during the middle of this real-time communication, you can't rewind that communication and go back to what was missed. You simply lose that information and you continue on with your call. One of the ways that we're able to measure how often this data is being transmitted through the network is through a metric known as jitter. Jitter is a measurement of how much time exists between different data frames that we're receiving. Hopefully, we're able to get a consistent amount of data coming through the network. But if there are significant delays between these packets, you'll see that these jitter numbers begin to increase. What we're hoping to see is over time, we will see a consistent amount of data being received by our workstation, and that data is coming in at regular intervals. There's not significant gaps between any one of these, therefore these jitter values will be relatively small. If there's some type of network congestion or any errors, you may find that it is not a consistent amount of data that we're receiving. We might see a group of data and then a longer gap between, then another grouping of data, and then a longer gap between there, and so on. In this case, there's a significant amount of jitter between these particular frames, and it will probably cause our video to freeze or our phone call to be very choppy. These applications are expecting you to be able to send data through the network and have very low latency as it's moving from one part of the network to the other. Anytime you're running a real-time application, it will be very demanding, and you'll know immediately either on the screen or listening to the audio that you're having problems communicating with this real-time communication. If you're communicating across the internet, you may want to run a speed test. This will tell you overall how much information you're able to transfer over what period of time. This might help you identify links that may be too slow for this real-time application. With an older installation, it may be that the equipment simply can't handle the demands of these modern applications, and you may want to consider performing a router or a switch upgrade. And if you have a packet capture, you will have a detailed overview of exactly what was going on that network, and you'll be able to determine if the issue is related to the amount of traffic, how quickly we're receiving the traffic, or if the problem may be related to something else. Port flapping is when you have a link light on your Ethernet connection, and then you don't have a link light, and then you have a link light again, and then you don't have a link light, and that interface continues to go up and down and up and down. Many times this is a physical problem, and it may be associated with the cable that you're using. By replacing the cable or putting on a new connector, you may find that you're able to resolve this port flapping problem. The problem could also be the physical interface on the switch that you're connecting to. So if you move your Ethernet cable to a different port on that switch, you'll be able to determine if the problem follows the cable or if the problem is resolved. And ultimately, you may find that it is related to the cable. If this is a simple patch cable, it might be relatively easy to swap out, or you may need to bring in a crew to run a new cable across the entire length of the building. Latency is defined as the delays between the request and the response. Anytime we have a measurement of those two, we can identify how quick or how slow our network might be performing. There's, of course, going to be some latency on the network because we have to send this information to another device. That information has to be received, processed, and then the answer has to be sent back. Sometimes we can measure that latency in microseconds. Other times it might be measured in seconds or even minutes. It would be useful to know what the response times are during each hop along the way. This may require you to have multiple measurements or to be able to have multiple devices all measuring at the same time. This would allow you to look at a packet capture and be able to calculate the total response time across the network, and then how much latency might also be included by the application itself. One of the challenges we have with wireless networks is there may be other devices around us that are creating interference. Sometimes these are devices you weren't really expecting to cause a problem with your wireless network. For example, fluorescent lights, microwave ovens, cordless telephones, and other high-power sources can create quite a bit of interference that can certainly create performance problems on a wireless network. And sometimes you may have no control over this interference, especially if you're in a building with many tenants. They may have their own wireless networks and their own microwave ovens, and you may have no control over how and when they use those devices. One way that you can visually see how much signal you're receiving and how much interference you're receiving is by looking at a signal-to-noise ratio. Many operating systems can provide you with an overview of signal-to-noise ratios and create a graph over time so that you can get an idea of just how much interference may be in the air around you. With a signal-to-noise ratio measurement, or an SNR, we of course want to know how much signal we're receiving, and then we want to compare that to how much noise or interference we're getting on that same network. If we're broadly looking at a signal-to-noise ratio like this one, we're able to get a breakdown of that signal and noise. Although we're not sure where the noise may be coming from, we can certainly measure the impact it's having on our devices. We obviously want the signal-to-noise ratio to be a very large ratio. You certainly don't want a one-to-one relationship between signal and noise. That means you have just as much noise as you do signal. Ideally, you would have much more signal and very little noise. Here's a graph of signal-to-noise ratio where we see quite a bit of noise, and then we only have a little bit of signal on top of that. The ratio here is almost a 1-to-1 with this particular wireless network. What we would prefer to see is a little bit of noise at the bottom and much more signal, and someone who's using this network is having a much better wireless experience. Sometimes our problems are not associated with the network, and in many ways not associated with the application. Instead, it might be that we don't have permission to access the resources that we're trying to access. In those cases, we might have an authentication issue where we need to provide our username, our password, and any other type of authentication factor. It may be that we authenticated previously to that resource, but now that authentication is timed out, and now we need to refresh that connection to be able to log in again. Or it may be part of a background process where we provide a username and password that service will use. Because this is running in the background, we may not see any error messages or get any feedback if that authentication doesn't work. And of course, a packet capture will show you everything about this connection. So if we see in the packet capture that we requested a resource and immediately got a denied permission, then our problem might be related to an authentication issue. Some of the most difficult network problems to troubleshoot are those that are intermittent. This means sometimes the network is working normally and other times it isn't. To be able to properly troubleshoot this, we need to be looking at the problem when it's happening. And that may be a challenge if it's only happening at certain times of the day. Some of the things you can do is to set an ongoing ping, like the one I have here, where I'm constantly pinging a device every second to see the connectivity that I'm getting. You could also run a trace route to a known location or run speed tests occasionally to see what the performance might be on the network. If the intermittent problem that you're seeing is one that is going to a third party, then you may have to work directly with that third party to help troubleshoot where this problem is occurring. This may add more complexity to troubleshooting the problem, so you want to be sure to have as much information as possible to help with the troubleshooting process. And if you are working with a third party, you may want to check your contract for your service level agreement. This will give you information on what the expectation of uptime and availability might be for that third party, and it might also tell you what the response time is for getting support. Troubleshooting printer issues can be challenging. You never know if the issue is related to an application, a printer driver, the operating system, or the printer itself. One of the ways that you can narrow down this problem is by printing a test page from your operating system. In Windows, there's a built-in function to create a test page. This means that you aren't using an application, you're simply using the operating system and the device driver as it's currently configured. You might also have a way to perform a test print from the printer itself. That will test from the hardware of the printer, and the operating system and device driver have no impact on the printer level test. Here's an example of a Windows printer test page. This was created by pressing that Print Test Page button from the device driver itself. We're not only interested in the quality of the output, but we're also interested in the information that is contained on the page. We have information about the printer properties and how they're configured. We also know the print driver properties, and we know exactly what printer driver files are associated with this printer. You may find that your printer test page does not have the quality you were expecting. For example, you might have a single line that goes all the way down the page. If this is an inkjet printer, then you probably have dirty print heads, so simply cleaning those print heads can probably remove that line. If this is a laser printer, it's probably a scratch that is on the photosensitive drum that's used inside of that printer, and as the drum is rotating around, that scratch is simply leaving a black mark all the way down the page. If the output is faded or it's difficult to read what's on the page, then you're probably running out of toner or you're very low on ink. And if you're seeing double images on the page or there's speckling on the page, then the laser printer optical drum is probably not cleaning properly, and you're seeing a ghost or shadow from the previous rotation of that drum. Here's what a scratch on that photosensitive drum would look like. It's just a single black line that goes all the way down the page. And if the cleaning If the output is faded or it's difficult to read what's on the page, then you're probably running out of toner or you're very low on ink. And if you're seeing double images on the page or there's speckling on the page, then the laser printer optical drum is probably not cleaning properly, and you're seeing a ghost or shadow from the previous rotation of that drum. Here's what a scratch on that photosensitive drum would look like. It's just a single black line that goes all the way down the page. And if the cleaning process is not working properly, then you're probably seeing a normal part of the page and then a copy of that that's a little bit lighter later on down the page. This ghosting will continue until you're able to correct the cleaning problem inside of your laser printer. Here's a page of output you definitely don't want to see coming out of your printer. This garbled print might be caused by a number of different issues. One of them might be a bad printer driver, or you've specified the wrong model of printer in your Windows configuration. In those cases, you might be sending the wrong page description language to the printer. The printer might be expecting PCL, and you might be sending PostScript, or vice versa. Of course, we don't know if this is related to the print driver or the operating system, or if we have a physical problem with the printer. So if you have a way to print a test print on the printer, you'll be able to see if you're able to get good output, or if the printer also provides this garbled output. If your printer test works properly, and your Windows driver test works properly, then it could be that the application is sending bad information to the printer. You may want to try a different application or try upgrading the application you currently have to see if you can improve the output. Occasionally, you'll find that the paper will jam inside the printer. What you don't want to do is pull that paper so that you are ripping it and leaving part of that paper inside the printer mechanism. Some printers will release their printer mechanisms when you open the top of the printer, and that might make it a lot easier to be able to remove that paper. If no paper is being pulled from your printer tray, or you're getting multiple pages pulled at the same time to go through the printer, then you might have a problem. Try a different application or try upgrading the application you currently have to see if you can improve the output. Occasionally, you'll find that the paper will jam inside the printer. What you don't want to do is pull that paper so that you are ripping it and leaving part of that paper inside the printer mechanism. Some printers will release their printer mechanisms when you open the top of the printer, and that might make it a lot easier to be able to remove that paper. If no paper is being pulled from your printer tray, or you're getting multiple pages pulled at the same time to go through the printer, then you might have a problem with either the paper tray or with the pickup rollers. These pickup rollers need to be clean, and they do wear over time. If you're performing a printer maintenance using an official maintenance kit from the printer manufacturer, they very often will include additional pickup rollers to avoid this kind of problem. And sometimes you'll notice that the output from your printer, especially with the laser printer, will have creases in the paper itself. That may be because of a problem in the paper path as it's moving through the printer, or it may be that you're using a paper that is a different weight than what is recommended by the printer manufacturer. Make sure you check your printer documentation so you know exactly what the recommended weight of paper would be for that specific printer. Here's a closer view of these pickup rollers and the rollers inside of your printer. You can see that these are relatively new. They don't seem to have any creases on them, and you can see there's not much wear on the rollers that are currently installed. If your printer is not printing, but you look at the printer queue and there's a lot of jobs that are queued up waiting to be printed, then your problem might be with the printer spooler itself. The printer spooler is a middle point between the application and the printer. The application sends a print job to the spooler, and the spooler is responsible for then sending that print job to the printer. If one of those print jobs is corrupted, it may cause this spooler to either crash or freeze. Some print spoolers will restart automatically. For example, this one in Windows, on the first failure, will restart this service. The second failure will restart again, but if there is a subsequent failure, it will completely stop and require your intervention. You may be able to go to your Windows Event Viewer, specifically the Windows Print Service as part of that event viewer, and see if any of these corruptions or any other problems with the print spooler are occurring. It may just be that one print job is causing the issue for everyone else, but once that print spooler fails, nothing else in the queue is going to be printed. You as the administrator are able to delete that print job or move it to the bottom of the list, let everything else print, and then you can troubleshoot that specific print job. Our printers commonly make noises, but they're not usually a grinding noise. We don't really have to grind anything up inside the printer to get it to print properly. Instead, this may indicate that some other type of problem is occurring. Maybe it's a paper jam inside the printer, or maybe an ink cartridge has come loose or needs to be seated down so that it doesn't rub against any other parts of the printer. Each printer operates in a different way and has a different number of steps for troubleshooting, so make sure you check the manual for your printer to see what you should do if you happen to hear any grinding noises. Or it may be a bad part that requires a specialist to be able to take the printer to their office or to visit on site, take the printer completely apart, find that bad part, replace it, and then put everything back together. This could certainly cause some noise inside the printer. If you don't properly seat those ink cartridges, it will certainly cause some noise when you finally send a print job and that carriage tries to go back and forth inside of the printer. Our printers do more than simply print information on a page. Very often, they are also providing finishing services. That finishing would be collating, binding, stapling, and performing an additional task once the output has been created. Some larger printers will collate multiple copies together and then staple each copy as it's created. Occasionally, you'll have a staple jam and you'll need to remove that staple to continue the process. Every printer is a little bit differently on how you remove those staple jams, so make sure you check with your printer documentation. And some printers can perform hole punches. That hole punch is determined by the application and the driver that you're using. So if the holes are not lining up exactly where you would expect, make sure you check with the application that you're using and make sure you're using the latest print driver. On most printers, we can choose to print a portrait mode or a landscape mode. If you're printing a page in portrait and you get the output in landscape, then there has definitely been a mismatch somewhere along the line. Normally, this setting is handled in the print driver of your operating system. So make sure you check the defaults for the print driver and then also check the settings that you're sending out when you choose to print from your application. You may find that this is a problem with the print driver, and simply upgrading the print driver will solve the problem. If the print driver is not telling the printer the proper orientation, you may be able to control this at the printer itself. Printers usually have a default setting on whether they will print in a portrait mode or a landscape mode, and adjusting that at the printer may affect all of the subsequent output from that device. The printers that we use in our offices tend to have multiple paper trays. You can see that on the printer that we have here, that on the bottom is 4 different paper trays that you could select paper from when you perform that output from your application. You would normally tell the printer when you're sending the print job that you would like all of the output to come from the paper that is in paper tray number 1. One of the things you have to make sure is that the paper tray that you're choosing matches the size of the paper associated with the output. For example, you don't want to send output that was designed for a 14-inch legal size page to a paper tray that only has 11-inch letter size paper. You'll normally see the list of paper trays in the print driver when you're ready to print, so you'll be able to choose the proper tray from that list. It might be a good idea as the network administrator to confirm that the list of trays that you see in the print driver matches the trays that are physically installed on the printer. If there is a mismatch between the size of the paper that you wanted to print and the size of the paper that's in that print tray, you may see messages on the screen of your printer that tell you that this paper is mismatched and you'll need to load the appropriate page for this particular output. Here's a view from the output where I'm choosing to print to my laser printer. This says that the paper source is the main tray for this particular output. Here's a view from the output where I'm choosing to print to my laser printer. This says that the paper source is the main tray and the media is automatically selected. But you might want to configure your printer driver with the specifics of what type of paper are contained within that main tray. So here are the properties for this printer driver, and you can see that I have the option to decide what a manual feed size paper would be. In this case on my printer, it's a letter size paper. And then you can specify what size of paper is contained within the main tray. And you can see there are a number of options available that you can configure for that main tray of the printer. When you're troubleshooting these corporate printers, you also have to be very good at troubleshooting networks. That's because these printers tend to be connected to our wired and our wireless networks. We would want to perform the same type of network troubleshooting as we do for any other device on the network. You would first need to confirm whether this is a printer that's connected to the wired network or the wireless network. That way you'll know whether you're troubleshooting a problem with the cable or whether you're troubleshooting a problem with the interference on the wireless network. You would then want to confirm that the IP address settings of the printer are configured properly for that device. So you want to check the IP address, the subnet mask, the default gateway, any DNS settings, and any other important network configuration settings. And you may want to check to see if the print server inside of this printer is working properly. Most printers have their own print server, and there's usually a management front end where you can look at the print server, stop it, restart it, and perform any management of the pending print jobs. And because this is a network device, you can also look for link lights. For example, on this printer, it has a connection on the back of the printer, and you can see if it's connected to the network, if it has an active link, and if it is sending and receiving data.
guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to get your Comptia A Plus certification in 2025. Now, I will be honest, I got mine March 29, 2024. However, it's the same exam, so it's the same criteria, and I feel like the tips are going to be the exact same. So let's get into it. First off, what is the Comptia A Plus exam? You can go read about it more in detail on the Comptia website. However, I'll just give you a quick rundown. It's an exam or certification broken into two exams, the Core 1 and Core 2, respectively, 220, 1101, and then 220, 1102. Core 1 is going to be your hardware, networking, mobile devices, cloud computing. You'll need to understand how computers work, what is a CPU, what is a motherboard, what's the difference between a hard drive and a solid state drive, as well as some basic networking concepts and troubleshooting issues or techniques. And then for Core 2, we're going to be diving directly into different operating systems. We're thinking about Mac OS, Chrome OS, Linux, Windows, security, software troubleshooting. You're also going to be covering professional practices, like how to configure those various operating systems I just named, along with some basic cybersecurity measures. Now, who's this certification for? Honestly, it's for anybody who wants to break into tech. In general, it's an entry-level tech certification. Once you get the certification, I would say that you would be qualified for entry-level roles such as help desk or customer support. You're going to learn very much what basic or foundational troubleshooting measures are employed in corporate environments, and you're going to learn how to do that and be tested on that through multiple choice questions and PBQs or performance-based questions, which can either be in the form of fill in the blank, drag and drop, things like that. So now let's get to the meat and bones of this. How will you be able to pass this exam in less than a month? I was able to do it in less than a month, and I feel like majority you can if you listen to my advice and take these steps, and just follow the advice I give you. First, you're going to want to look up Jason Dion. This guy, he has an amazing Udemy course, Udemy. I'll drop the link down in the description. He also has some videos on YouTube that are free, so you can get a taste of what he's like. But I recommend his Udemy courses, especially because he includes 6 practice exams, 6 full-length practice exams that mimic the Comptia actual exams. I'll just basing the exam off of the Comptia guidelines, which are also on the website. You can go read those at any time. And he basically has a course where he teaches you those based off the guidelines. He goes through A through Z, and then after that, you can test your knowledge doing the practice exams. What I did and what I highly recommend you to do is to go take those practice exams until you are scoring at least a 90% or above, and take one a day. You don't want to take the same one every day because you're just going to end up memorizing it and you're not really learning anything, versus you taking one a day, reviewing the incorrect answers. Use ChatGPT, leverage it to help you quickly learn about concepts and maybe explore a little bit more into it. And don't be afraid to get hands-on and actually build a computer. I mean, that was one of the main principles of learning earning the A+. You want to have a foundational knowledge on how computers work, and the simplest way I found was to actually go build my own computer. And you can go do that. You don't have to go buy new parts. You can go find some on eBay. There's plenty of computers that are thrown out for corporate use, and you can go ahead and grab those and start playing around, actually understanding what technologies are being used for networking as well. You can go grab a hub. You can go grab a unmanaged and managed switch on eBay. They should all be less than $50. It might not be the best quality, but just for the learning purposes, I feel like if you're getting into tech, and this is the A+, you should know what those are and what it is. You should get a virtual machine as well. That's how I practice the different operating systems for Core 2. I used VirtualBox and VMware to practice the Linux systems to see what commands we're going to be, or not even commands, but the settings, the different, because they do ask for settings and like where do you go to look for this display adjustment. So you got to know what are the different types of system configurations that can be made on the different OSs. But Jason Dion was my number one go-to. I'd recommend him number one. Next, I would recommend Professor Messer. He also...
Hello and welcome to my channel. This is actually my first video, but today we're going to be talking about how I passed my Comptia A+ Core 1 and Core 2 exams. And a little bit of background on me is I'm new to the IT field. I just started my first sort of level 1 help desk type job in IT. I started as a contractor for a few months, and I'm graduated into a full-time role where I work a hybrid schedule. It's pretty nice. I love the amount of flexibility that it affords me in my life, and I can't say that I wouldn't be here now without my A+ exam. A lot of what has helped me get my foot in the door in the career has been because I have gone for the A+, and because I've gone for that, I've also gone on to get my Network Plus, and just recently I got my Security Plus, and I'm just continuing to upskill. And I think that knowledge to an employer, knowing that you are dedicated to learning and dedicating to pushing yourself to learn new technologies and how to interact with customers and use end users